Okay, I think the slim music down was said when there were a few more people around, which makes that seem like a fair reason. Something. Music, one small jewel set off a storm that no one saw coming on a quiet royal morning. The Jubilee ring, which was full of history and power that wasn't said, was sold in a time that shocked everyone in the palace. Princess Anne's choice to give it to Catherine was planned, had meaning, and couldn't be ignored. But what shocked the court most was who was turned down. There were whispers going on inside the court. What Camilla said was simply turned down, which led to rumors of loyalty, legacy, and power. Was this move a quiet message about who controls the future of the crown? In the past took charge in secret. Not long ago, in 2022, when the country was still as people got used to life without Queen Elizabeth II, a quieter review was going on below Buckingham Palace. Deep the royal, snorts, jewel vault is below the grand staterooms. It is protected by strong doors and walls that keep the temperature stable. Stood still as it always does. The temperature stayed the same, and the lighting was soft and planned to keep people safe. History itself. One cloudy morning, Princess Anne came here, not as a member of the royal family, but as the Queen's most trusted servant. He walked with purpose and wore simple clothes, without any pomp. She walked past rows of velvet-lined boxes that held items that had been used to mark coronations. There were weddings, jubilees, and decades of service. It wasn't her first stop since her mother's death in September 2022. The study of Queen Elizabeth II collection went on, and Anne took on a central part that is shaped by both memory and duty. Every drawer that was opened had weight in it, but the one in particular caught her eye right away. There was lying in a dark leather case, brooch for the Jubilee. Its deep blue, clear diamond in the middle caught the eye of. There was light even in the dark vault. Diamonds set in a flower shape around it meant unity between the worlds. Elizabeth had done her job. And carefully picked it up and felt its familiar weight, in her hand. This was more than just a gem. It said 1977 and had a silver birthday. When Elizabeth stood on the steps of Buckingham Palace on June 7, a smile at the people who were in the mall. It was also 2002 when the brooch was made. Had been made better with more gems to mark 50 years on the throne. This piece had a rule. Inside it. And had recently learned that people were interested in the brooch. Had shown up somewhere else. Camilla, who is now Queen Consort, had said to honor Elizabeth's jubilees in a meaningful way. They did it quietly. There was nothing wrong with the thought, Anne didn't just brush it off. But Anne's attention was on the ring in her hand as she stood in the vault. Moved away from standards and requests. This was not a matter of choice or state. It had to do with direction. And knew that wearing history was not the same as carrying it forward. Some items in the royal collection were never meant to be shared with other people. They stuck to an imaginary line that led them. By custom instead of title. The Jubilee BR was made to honor Elizabeth. That group includes things she wore at important events and milestones during her rule. It stood for consistency, not ease. To fix mistakes, it was meant to be. As Anne put the brooch back in its case, memories popped up out of nowhere. Her mother making changes to it before public events, talking about its beauty, balance, and what it means. Elizabeth had always known which signs meant the most to her. Why? And felt like she had a solid understanding inside her. The choice did not need to be discussed or approved. It had to fit with the Queen's big picture of the royal family. And was set on what she was going to do before the vault drawer closed. The pin for the Jubilee wood do not stay stuck in the present. It belonged to the future Queen, the woman who would one day be Queen. Put your feet where Elizabeth used to be. As Anne walked back, she turned away. As they moved toward the royal hallways, the choice was made without any formalities. Talk, which was already shaping what would happen next. But if Anne moved with permission, what other choices are being made behind closed doors that are already shaping the future of the monarchy? Stay with ooze. The line. And wouldn't let blur happen. Not long after Princess Anne left the gem vault, she heard about a quiet talk that had already happened to happen somewhere else. It took place at Clarence's house on an ordinary day. King Charles III and Camilla had afternoon tea together. The place was quiet, known, and very different from the weight that Buckingham Palace carries. Over pretty china and soft light, Camilla talked about Queen Elizabeth II and the important events that had happened during her reign, what her rule was like. She brought up the Jubilee pin while she was thinking about things. Saying that it would be a nice piece for her to wear to honor the late Queen's jubilees. Charles paid attention and understood. He saw Camilla get better at her job as she dealt with both public and private criticism. He liked that she wanted to respect his mother's memory by making the change. At first, his answer didn't show any resistance, it only showed that he agreed with the plan on an emotional level. Nothing was made right then and there, but the idea stuck around and made its way through the house until it reached Anne. And did not show surprise or anger when she heard about the conversation. Instead, she paused. She didn't see this as a personal problem or a way to judge Camilla's intentions. And had I spent my whole life watching how symbols were passed down and knew that some things had rules that went back further than any one era point. One of those things was the Jubilee brooch. Anne's thinking was based on past experiences, not on how she felt. In the past, there were some gems that were worn by many people, and others had a direct link to the future of the crown. The big event, the brooch, was made in 1977 to honor Queen Elizabeth II's Silver Jubilee, honoring those who have stuck with things after the war. It was later made better in 2002, to mark the Golden Jubilee of 50 years of service. These warrantines shared with ease. They marked important parts of a rule, and the brooch exists because of them. And this put the piece in a completely different group. It was not an ornament for a partner that was meant to rotate and take on different jobs. It was a redefining item that was tied to continuity rather than ease of use. It meant to move forward, not sideways. That difference was important and did not ask Camilla to come over, and she did not immediately challenge Charles. There wasn't any "there is no need to raise your voice or make strong statements in a fight." Her power came from being clear. The path was already clear in her mind. A pin for the Jubilee belonging to the future Queen consort, not the one who was now in power. That was the future Catherine, Princess of Wales, who was still playing out her part but was deeply rooted in what was to come. By sticking to that view, and quietly changed a line that had never been written down but had always been there. That's right. It wasn't Camilla herself that she didn't like, but the idea that each sign has to come after the title alone. Some signs came after time. As the palace went about its daily business, and the choice was made without any announcements. The brooch stayed where it was, and planned for it to go while she waited. And while no one said no out loud, for people who knew how important custom is, the message was clear. And had decided to stay the same over respect, and by doing so, they made sure that the story of the Jubilee brooch would continue in the way that it was always meant to. Come. What message did Anne's quiet action about custom send in a sneaky way? Power and who will take over? And who really has power over the crown symbols? Stay tuned. A gem that could tell time. To understand why Princess Anne made the choice she did, if the Jubilee pin made you feel calm instead of shocked, it might help to think about what it really meant. Its value has never been based on sparkle alone. It was always meant for the pin to stand the test of time. That's something that not many royal jewels ever do. It all began in 1977, a year when Queen Elizabeth II turned 25 years old. Britain was coming out of the hard decades after World War II. The Silver Jubilee was more than just a party. It made me feel better. To mark that important event, the Crown asked the famous royal jeweler Gerard and Company in London to make a piece that fits the occasion. The result was the Jubilee brooch, which is an oval sapphire that is deep blue and stable, set in a flower-shaped cut setting. There are diamonds set in the pattern, and there are small gold accents all over it. Every single part was on purpose. The blue stood for strength and peace. The diamonds stood for unity in all the areas Elizabeth ruled. On June 7, 1977, people remembered the brooch. It was worn by Queen Elizabeth II on her balcony appearance at Buckingham Palace, where he stood in front of groups of cheering people as planes flew overhead. Image gallery from that day showed more than just the service. They showed a queen who was sure of her job and clearly connected to the people. Her people. The pin stood out against her pastel dress. Right away connected to that picture that defined her rule. It turned into a piece that means a lot to her. Elizabeth didn't save it just for important events. When it was important to her, she wore it. Say there will be banquets, important talks, and more relaxed family get-togethers. Those near to her remembered how she would sometimes comment on how heavy it was or change it herself, making it seem less like Anne, more like a close friend than an heirloom. It made her think of promises met and duties still due taking shape. In 2002, the Queen turned 50 years old. The throne, the brooch changed as she ruled. In honor of the Golden Jubilee, was reset with more diamonds that were carefully added to the original design. The update didn't change who it was. It made it deeper. This brooch now had there are two important dates on one form, 25 years and 50 years. This makes it a picture of the service. She wore it to events at Windsor Castle and Balmoral, where there were fewer people at the parties, so people could think and be with their families. That's when the brooch turned into a unique gem that could find the arc of rain without words. She did it because she felt duty-bound to do so. Her trust in continuity above all else and her ability to stay the same. She talked about it like she knew it, sometimes remembering how exciting it was in 1977. Sometimes the calmer pride of 2002. Each time, the message went back to the same thing: service over self. In this light, the Jubilee pin makes sense. Never meant to be moved without a reason. It worked as a chart, not a sign of style or popularity, but of continuity and security. This is why years later, when Princess Anne thought about the future, she couldn't help but come to the same conclusion: the brooch wasn't just for a short time. It was part of the long road. Moving forward with the story of a reign, ready to rest where the story would go on instead of ending. What do you think about the Jubilee now? Brooch really tells us about the future of the kingdom and who will next take over its secret power. Hold on tight. Where honor and the past met. By the end of October 2022, the work inside Buckingham Palace had changed from being sad to being responsible. Where the gold vault is hidden, the area below the palace's big rooms became the calm hub of that change. On a cloudy morning, Princess Anne went back there again, but this time it wasn't for a celebration. But to be clear, the vault had strong doors that shut it off, and the air inside was carefully managed. The only sounds that broke the quiet were the soft movements of gloved hands and the faint clicks of drawers opening and closing. Waiting, she had Eleanor Harrove, the longtime keeper of the jewels, standing next to her. As she led the way, her ledger tucked under one arm and her reading glasses sitting low on her nose. Following improved processes, each piece was categorized, inspected, and written down. Over many generations. There was no hurry. There was no levity. This was not just making a list. It told the story of the past. And moved slowly through the rows. A steady, thoughtful look on their face. She knew almost every piece before it was named. Some people had memories of at Windsor Castle, crystal glasses clinked under chandeliers at state dinners. Others thought of Balmoral, which was calmer and more private, and where people wore jewelry not for show but to feel like they knew each other. As the drawers opened, memories came back without warning. Getting ready for the Jubilee celebrations and practice sessions where her mother fixed a clasp or talked about how a piece fit against cloth. Careful and always right. When the Jubilee brooch showed up again, it was resting. The mood changed inside its dark leather case this time, and paused longer. She carefully lifted it, enjoying the familiar feel of it in her hand. The deep blue light from the vault hit sapphire and stayed there for a split second. She wasn't standing under Buckingham Palace, she was back at Windsor getting ready for the Silver Jubilee was in 1977. She could almost hear her mother's voice, which was cool and sensible, and told her aides that the brooch needs to be just right. After Balmoral, memories came after meetings for the 2002 Golden Jubilee, where the extra sapphire showed 50 years of service instead of just a party. Eleanor took a quiet note of the brooch's features in her book with a steady stroke of her pen. But she didn't talk over him. She knew what to do when there had to be quiet. Not because she wasn't sure, but because she knew. Anne's grip got a little tighter. It felt heavier than the other times. The vault review had have been about keeping the collection of Elizabeth II safe, take care to protect, keep, and record them. But as she stood there, Anne understood there was a difference. It wasn't just about where the jewels would go anymore. It was about what they meant. Would be alive. Elizabeth had always known what signs meant. There were some pieces that often worn, widely shared, and allowed to change with the times and fashion. For some, it was a deeper mission. They were meant to keep the monarchy stable as names and years went by. Past. That second group was made up of the Jubilee brooch. It wasn't just a reflection of the past. As it closed the silk case with great care, it pointed forward. And with that one easy move, the tension rose. The next choice wasn't about business. It was about them, historical and, of course, forward-looking. The next person who wore this pin would wear more than remember. People would have high hopes for them. As Anne moved on to the next box, the vault felt different. It wasn't just her mother's absence that was heavy on her, but also the burden of choosing who would represent her in the years to come. Once she was sure she understood what was going on, the way ahead became more clear, but harder to follow. And what's hidden? What kind of power and memory does the Jubilee brooch really give? Who will be the next person to carry the weight of history? Why is that? Watch out for now. A choice made in silence, snorts. In May 2023, Princess Anne was ready to move forward with the choice she had been thinking about for months. Going from plan to action. Kensington Palace was picked as the location not for grandeur, but for meaning. The Oak Room had been a place for a long time that felt warm and calm. For private family times instead of showing off in public. filtered light that is soft through tall windows, laying down on polished wood walls and old furniture. It was officially spring outside, and the palace gardens were very quiet and peaceful. Was very different from the weight of what was going to happen inside. Kate, the Princess of Wales, was the first person to arrive. Her entry was understated and showed that she was calm. More than anxiety. She wore a simple, classy outfit that was proper for a private event, get-together. Her body language was calm and alert. William stood next to her and gave her a quiet comfort, but they didn't say a word. Thanks a lot. These people knew that this wasn't a time for words. It needed to be there. Soon after, Princess Anne came in. She was carrying herself, music, with the same steady strength that had helped her get through the months since her mother died. She didn't have any notes with her or act in a professional way. In her hands was a small blue velvet case that was easy to spot. How important it is. The Jubilee pin was inside, out of sight but still felt by everyone in the room. No one there was drawing attention to the moment. There were no talks, ready for thoughts. Anne stood facing Catherine, and her face was calm and determined. When she spoke, her voice was steady and direct, as if it were shaped by job rather than emotion. Her talk about her mother wasn't long, but it was clear. Catherine was told that Queen Elizabeth II's collection was never meant to be a way to decorate. Each piece had a mission, a duty, and an expectation. She said that the Jubilee brooch marked important points in a rainy season and belonged with the future it was meant to bring. Thank you. The brooch caught the light as soon as Anne opened the case. The deep blue sapphire and diamonds around it looked the same, like they had always been there. Catherine took a step forward right away. No surprise could be seen, only shame, and carefully pinned the brooch to Catherine's collar and made a few small changes, just like Elizabeth had done before. Done by herself. The move was thoughtful and almost religious. In that there was silence, the message was clear. There was no more news. No reason given was given that went beyond what was already known. The move talked for itself. Of course. Anne had crossed the line when she gave Catherine the Jubilee brooch. She had thought about it for a long time. The brooch would not fit through the part of queen consort right now. It had moved right up to the woman who would one day carry the crown. Soon after, Camilla and King Charles came in. There was no stress and there only recognition, no expressions. Camilla smiled calmly, and she acted in a calm way. Thank you. She didn't need to be told what had been decided. She knew by lifting his teacup as a small sign of agreement. Charles saw that his sister had kept things going. The moment went by without any problems. Mutual respect made things better instead of worse. As people talked about their memories of Elizabeth's jubilees, the mood in the room relaxed. A short laugh broke out, thoughts were shared, and the weight lifted just a bit, enough to breathe. But the importance stayed the same. What had happened in the wood room didn't need a public sign-off. The succession chain had been strengthened in a quiet but firm way. Without a doubt. When Catherine later looked down at the charm, it was there. It didn't feel so much like an honor as a new obligation. Also, Anne watched her, and she knew what she had told her months before in the vault. Had now become clear, could not be changed, and was set in stone for the future. Okay, what secret message does Catherine's brooch really have? It could be a secret, a job, or power. Change in the monarchy's plans for the future. No one heard the quiet shift. Made public. After the moment in the oak room was over, the house came to life. Went back to its usual pace. But below the calm surface, the events that had happened started to make sense. To go through Kensington Palace without making a sound. There was no open talk, but nothing was needed to be. People who had spent years reading the subtleties of the royal family's speech knew that it was clear that something important had become stable. In the halls and service rooms, employees looked at each other briefly as they did what they were supposed to do. Silver was shined, flowers were cleaned, and plans were made, keeping up. A maid took a little longer than usual to set up a table, telling a coworker that Princess Anne had done what she always did, she combining faith with custom. Being careful with his words, a senior footman said that the brooch was now back where it belonged. No, these were not lies spread by curiosity, but acknowledgments that are shaped by what they know. The house had been through a lot of changes, but this one showed a steady mark of consistency. That night, later in the evening, William and Catherine were able to spend some time alone in a less formal setting. The lights in the nursery at Kensington Palace had a bright glow, and the sounds of kids playing could be heard down the hall. Catherine touched the charm again, because she was still getting used to it. It felt not in terms of weight, but in terms of what it meant. William looked out before he spoke. He reminded her that his aunt's choice had to do with building a better future for George and Louis and Charlotte. He said it was more than just an honor, it was a sign of trust. Catherine nodded. She knew that the thing on her lapel held expectations for what would happen next years, not days. That same night, Princess Anne started her trip back to the Gatcombe Park. The familiar and vast farmland stretched out in front of her, putting down roots. She thought about herself as the house faded behind her. She thought about the time she had talked with her mother about the meaning of royal items. Elizabeth had been very clear that these things were never really owned. They were held and kept safe. Carefully passed on. And was sure she had done what she was told. There her face didn't show victory, it showed quiet determination. Camilla was at Clarence House. Took the news with calm. She didn't ask what happened, and she didn't lead a sign of sadness. After years of being watched by the world, she knew what it was like. The difference between how you feel and what things mean to you in a social context. The big event, the brooch, had found its place, and she didn't speak out against it. The days that followed, she kept up her during public duties. She wore pieces from her own collection that had been associated with her job for a long time. There wasn't a sign of competition, just change. In public, nothing seemed to have changed. No statements were put out. No answers were given. Still, among the royal family, roles had been slightly switched around. It was made clearer that Catherine would be the future queen spouse. The show. It was made clear again that Anne's job is to keep things going. Camilla's acceptance showed that she was stable, not stressed. The fact that there was no fighting was the message. The monarchy had moved forward without any problems, with respect as its leader. Instead of fighting back. What began as a single move in a quiet room is now echoed through the house with a quiet understanding. And as the focus slowly moved to other things, the deeper what that transfer meant kept sinking in, shaping how the next part would soon be seen by everyone else. The gates of the house. Then how did one quiet move in Akeda's secret vault change the future of the monarchy? And who really runs it? The next chapter. When the sign spoke for the first time? What does princess mean? Anne's choice was kept secret until the Jubilee brooch came back into public view. In June, that time came. 2023, at one of the grand outdoor parties held by Buckingham Palace, there were more than 8,000 people on the fields, and the air was filled with the smell of roses and new grass. Grass. It was quiet as Catherine, Princess of Wales, walked among them in a pale blue dress. Wearing a silk outfit, calm and aware. The deep blue was neatly pinned to her lapel. The blue diamond in the Jubilee brooch sparkled in the light of the afternoon. The word got through to those who knew what it was. Right away. There was no public announcement, and palace staff did not give any instructions. But cameras kept coming back, commentators took note. The brooch hadn't been worn by a royal since Queen Elizabeth II died, and its location was clearly planned. Kate wore it with ease, like it had always been a part of her story. Be sure of yourself when you meet guests. Within hours, pictures were seen by many people, and people who were there said it was a subtle but crucial moment. The pin had gone into a new part of its life. That message was emphasized again a few days later on an even bigger stage. In June 2023, putting up the color brought a lot of people to the mall, and worldwide, millions more are watching. The British royal family got together on the rooftop of Buckingham Palace, a place that has a lot of history, the Jubilees of Elizabeth II. William and Catherine stood next to each other, their kids are close, which shows that they stay together. Against the narrow pale blue coat she wore, the Jubilee pin sparkled again. A lot of people who were watching couldn't help but be connected. This was the same deck. Where Elizabeth had worn the brooch many years before to mark important events in her rule. It was now on the woman. Hoped to be at the center of that scene one day. Quickly after came the reaction. But kept their cool. The brooch was called a sign of continuity by the Daily Telegraph, which pointed to its careful return at times that have to do with the future of the crown. The Times had on how important royal heirlooms are historically and how clear they're setting up. People responded right away on social media. Picture of Elizabeth sporting the brooch in 1977 and 2002 were shown along with pictures of Catherine, so there are clear links between families. Catherine's ability to stick to custom was praised, without too much. The Jubilee pin was talked about a lot for a short time, mostly because more praise than trouble. Later that year, the brooch showed up again, but this time it was under lights. Instead of open sky. In the fall of 2023, at a state dinner at Windsor Castle, Catherine wore a green evening dress when she got there. The Jubilee pin stood out. On her shoulder. It was a formal event with diplomats, high-level officials from other countries, and top members of the royal family's home. Conversation stopped when people looked at the well-known diamond. Later, Vogue talked about how well the piece was made, and The Guardian called it a visual proof of succession that is said without using words and music. Notably, a different story started to emerge. Queen Camilla kept doing her job calmly while wearing long jewels. As part of her job, such as wearing the Burmese ruby tiara when it was suitable. There was a clear difference, but not rude or angry. The balance was kept because each woman carried a sign that was appropriate for her role. For Princess Anne saw these appearances and they proved what she had already thought during the vault. Look back months ago. The pin was now in the right place. No one spoke out against it. There is no misunderstanding, only recognition. People got it because it was shown to them, not told to them. As for Catherine, as people wore the Jubilee brooch longer, it took on a deeper meaning. No longer did it only belong to Elizabeth's mind. To's rule. It stood between the celebrations of the past and the ones to come. Being responsible. Without a ritual or a speech, succession had been made clear as keep going. It used to be that the Jubilee pin told time, but now it told the way. What do you think this quiet passing of the Jubilee charm is? Could it really show who has power, who will take over, and who is loyal in the monarchy? We'd like to read what you have to say in the comments. Do not forget to share, like, and give your email address.